Hello and welcome to Resolutionary Leaders. I'm your host, Helena Gotto, and today we have Amy Quesenberry. Welcome, Amy.
Hello, Helena. Welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you are a veteran fun HR person, as you're being referred to, as you get to go around and do all the fun people stuff as a consultant. And you're also a motivational speaker and the author of a book called How You Show Up Matters. So thank you so much. What did I miss out? What did I miss out about your background?
Yes. Right now, I currently work for an engineering firm. So I
Mhm.
want to put that in. And then on the side, I do the motivational speaking. So my primary role is director of training and organizational development at an engineering firm. And then on the side, like I said, the motivational speaking. My framework that I created is called Start with Compassion, which is absolutely central to our topic today, that you can't give what you don't have, right? We need to start with compassion. We need to show ourselves compassion. And so that's actually what a lot of what I taught teams around the world to do, HR teams, is what are our barriers? Where's the friction? What are our frustrations? What's preventing us from doing our best work? Let's figure that out. Let's make a plan and let's move forward. So that's what I mean by the fun HR. I didn't have to fire anybody.
You're not the person that when they get an email and they're like, oh no, Amy's calling me to her office. Not that HR.
Not that HR.
So just out of curiosity, what did you find were the trends of what was getting in the way of people's success and what the frictions were typically in these teams?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have to say a lot of it is ego. Really, a lot of it is ego.
Mm.
Okay. What I want, what I think, what I know. And what I mean by that is not being curious, not being as open minded as we could be, not being open to alternative perspectives, suggestions, and really getting stuck in, I need to be right. So that's what I mean by ego.
Yeah.
I need to be right. And as soon as people are able to step outside and elevate the perspective and say, what I do for this company is not about me. We all have a larger calling here, and it's to help this company do X, Y, Z. And when we can get out of our own way, and when we can really think the health and the good of the organization, which means the health and the good of your employees, right?
Yeah. And I've found it's the attachment to previous decisions, the ego that is involved, and this isn't working. And I'm struggling to actually acknowledge that because it's a result of some decisions that I've championed. And that's been something when I've gone in and said, like, this structure is not working, right? These two leaders, you really only need one. And then there's a kind of a fight to justify the decisions that have already been made. That's one of
That
the yeah.
That is huge. And so that attachment to that. And so part of that takes me back to what kind of culture are these leaders in? Are they creating? Is there some type of you can't fail? You've got to get it right. What is it that's causing them to not be able to say, let's fail fast and move on?
Mm.
That we can have some healthy risk in this culture and encourage people. We can make mistakes. We know we can right them. Let's not be irresponsible. Let's not put the company in jeopardy. What is it that's preventing them? It's looking up deeper at those layers because it could be you've got this leader that's ruling with an iron fist, that there's no room for mistakes. Wow. Now we've got a culture of fear.
Mm.
How successful is that going to be?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not at all. So with the conflict, when you go in and so often you hear, "Hey, I've got a horrible manager. My manager sucks. My manager this, that." How have you seen that change over the 20 or so years you've been in the industry? And I want to bring it back to care and accountability and the shift in how much care is required, the compassion, and then how to increase the accountability. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't know if I'm explaining myself well. I'm just going to throw that all out there because I think that there's been a real shift in the expectations and how that shows up in the workplace now. So I'll let you riff.
And this is so important. I've had a lot of conversations with people that view compassion in the workplace as possibly being weak or soft. And I think that's what you're getting to, right? Yeah.
Mhm,
It couldn't be further from the truth, right? From the reality, I'll say. Okay. Because the thing is that if you're not having a difficult conversation with your direct report, the that's not kind. That's not compassionate. You don't think that person can feel that they're struggling? You don't think that person can feel that, oh my gosh, I'm so scared for the other shoe to drop. Like
mhm,
I know I'm not doing good here, but I don't know what to do. It's your responsibility as a leader to come in and say, hey, listen, I've seen the last 3 months, your numbers have gone down. All right. Let's talk about it. Let's sit down and figure out what's the barriers, what are the challenges. Without judgment, let's just figure this out together. Okay. Now that's an accountability conversation in a compassionate way.
mhm,
We can do both. But here's the deal. A lot of people leaders are scared to have these difficult conversations because it's uncomfortable.
mhm.
It's really uncomfortable. And we go back to, is it my fault? Did I make a mistake? Did I not show up for them? There's this whole talk track that if the leader is being honest, are they holding themselves accountable for what they did or didn't do?
Mhm.
And so if we can, within the Start with Compassion framework, is, by the way, the framework is an acronym for compassion. The first S is silence the judger. And so if we find that we've got a talk track going on in our mind that is judgmental, that's preventing us from doing the right thing by having this difficult conversation, maybe we turn the volume down on it. And maybe we have an open mind, get curious on, forget about how they got here. We know this employee needs help. What am I going to do as their manager to help them?
Yeah. Let's go through the framework. Let's start with the C. Because when you said
Yeah,
first S, I'm like, hang on a minute. Compassion starts with a C. And then I was like, okay, let's talk about some compassion. Let's start at the beginning.
perfect. All right. So I'm going to go fast. All right.
Okay.
So compassion, connected. That's the C. Understanding that we're all connected to each other, whether we realize it or not. When somebody in your circle, any of your circles is struggling, you can feel that, right? Whether you realize it or not, that's the connectedness that I'm talking about. Another way of looking at the connected is as you as a leader, how are you connecting with your team? How are you connecting with your clients? Colleagues, how are you connecting with your teammates? That's that connection. That makes a difference on how we show up. The O is open minded. I'm looking over here only because my graphic is here. O is for open minded. Okay. Understanding your path, Helena, looks different than my path. And that's all right. In fact, it's pretty awesome. All right. But when we can approach things with a more open mind, a more compassionate mindset, possibilities start to show up. In this for moments, this is where how you show up matters was born. Understanding that you can make a conscious decision at any time of how you show up. And this matters because how you show up can change the trajectory of your life. All right.
Mhm,
P is for patience and perspective. Understanding that, as I said earlier, sometimes just walking on the planet is a struggle,
mhm,
right? Sometimes just getting up out of bed. And so, how patient are you being with yourself? And the reality of how difficult your life is at this moment. How patient and forgiving are you being with yourself? How patient and forgiving are you being with the people around you? That patience can help you show up with a more compassionate perspective. That's the two P's. The A is awareness and acceptance. Having the awareness of, I'm having a very difficult morning. You beating yourself up because you're having a difficult morning, do you think that's going to help you? No. But if you can be aware of that, that's the first part of the A. And if you can accept, that's the second part of the A. And guess what? You've already transformed your morning. What a different morning you're going to have versus pushing through, battling through. I can get, just stop, just take a breath, right? I always say the A and the P are cousins. They really support each other. And then that gets us to the first S, which is silence the judger. It's the single most critical component of the framework. Without it, the framework cannot be sustained. And that is because as soon as we go into a judgmental state, that connectivity that we spoke about in the beginning, it is severed.
Mm. Mhm.
Severed. All right. Yeah, you can have a connection, but it's built on judgment. That's not a compassionate connection. That's the kind we're talking about. And so I always like to say if you find yourself in judgment of yourself or others, just turn the volume down. Just turn the volume down. The thing is that sometimes we'll say things to ourselves about ourselves that we would never say to another human being. It's just not nice. Or we have a talk track in our head about the person that lives next to us, that sits next to us at work, that lives across the planet from us, across the street, whatever it is. The reality is we don't know their story. We don't know their truth. But when we judge another person, we rob them of their autonomy and their truth, and we make it about us. We make it about the talk track that's in our head. So that's why I say silence the judger. All right. Here's the deal. Here's the way the framework works. You find yourself in this moment, okay? You're connected, you've got an open mind, you've silenced the judger, and you realize I can make a difference. I can make a difference in my life. I can make a difference in somebody else's life. What does this feeling of I can make a difference do? It gets us stimulated. We start to get excited. That's the second. All right. That leads us to the first I or to the I, which is that stimulation gets us interested. We start thinking, maybe I can do it. Then we get invested. We start to build a plan, right? Then we get intentional. That's our motor. That's what propels us forward. The intentionality in the I, that's when we actually do whatever it is we're excited about doing.
Mm.
So we do this thing. Maybe we volunteer. Maybe we show up more open minded in a project, whatever it is, in a meeting, whatever it is, right? Guess what happens? Because of the result, you start to get dopamine and oxytocin chemicals in our brain start to fire off. These are mood boosters. Think about the best decisions you make. Are you in a good mood or a bad mood? You're in a good mood. So that's where the onward and upward comes from because we get this boost of our mood. So when we think about infusing compassion into an organization, we're talking about our productivity going up, innovation going up, engagement going up. So this is why compassion is not soft, right? This is why it's not weak. Now, the in is new heights and horizons. Because what happens, Helena, if you commit to a lifestyle of compassionate leadership, of compassionately showing up for yourself and the people around you? This is how you transform your environment. This is how we collectively can transform the world. There it is. That's the framework.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And
Thank you for letting me share it.
I think so much of it is when you're going into a difficult conversation, and because I'm focused on on people in conflict and how to navigate it successfully, I think this is a way to set yourself up to go into it, like the first 6 steps really. The whole understanding that we're all connected. I'm gonna jump to a story but maybe I'll come back to it. And then so we're all connected. How are we connecting? Have I been nurturing my connections? Being open-minded, knowing that when I'm going into a conflict, I have a whole bunch of assumptions. What are my judgments? What are my biases? Getting clear on that and getting curious, getting into that open-minded space and knowing, okay, the moments, knowing that this is a moment, this is a very important moment that you need to show up in this state, patient, and with acceptance of it being difficult, all of those, and then to silence the judger. And I think the silencing the judger, when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, these pieces of really taking that judgment it's so much coming from you, coming from your filter. And so really identifying where you're judging and letting, like you're saying, silence it. But even just acknowledging, like, I am judging you as being lazy, or I'm judging that behavior rather than just this behavior. Help me understand. You've been late to work 3 times this week. What's going on? Is there something that we can work on? What's happening? And rather than just being like, you're lazy, you can't be on time. And then, so I think for conflict, these steps in the compassion framework are so important. And I want to go to my story about connected. This morning, I was coaching one of my clients, and she's a leader of a very large team. And the whole team's been really struggling for a number of years with her leadership style. And not everybody, but a significant amount of them. And she was she's just so today in the session, she was so, like, trying to express how the everything's changed, like, things have really changed. She's having these conversations, people are interacting differently, and she said, "There's a sense of," and I was like, "It's kinda relief, right?" I said, "Because you know what? Not all of the team has struggled, but all of the team has been watching you struggling to lead, to step into your leadership role because you have not been enabled with actionable steps and the support that you've needed. And I've been a part of that. And you're now like flourishing as a leader and feeling so good. Can you imagine how relieved everybody's feeling?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's exactly the feeling that I'm experiencing, just this uniform kind of exhale." So I love that. It's not just about connecting, but it's that we're all connected.
And I love that story because that's a beautiful illustration of the power of compassion. This person showed themselves compassion. They figured out what they needed to work on, what they needed to work through, sounds like. And there is a ripple effect. So this person, as a compassion catalyst, transformed their team
Yes.
by transforming themselves. And that's the power. It's an actual ripple effect. So when you think about the drop going into a puddle of water, a pond, a body of water, how do you want to be? Because we all impact what's happening around us. How do you want to affect that ripple? And as leaders, like you were just talking about in this story, don't think your people aren't watching, don't think they aren't feeling, and don't think they aren't experiencing by how you are showing up. And this is why compassionate leadership starts with us. We as leaders in the organization, we are setting the tone.
Amen.
Amen.
That goes back to my earlier when I said to you, you go as a consultant, you've gone around the world into companies and working out what's not working. And so often with the people, it's, oh, my manager. They blame their manager. And that there's something wrong with their manager. How often is that really the case? Like, why is that?
Yeah. So, one, I think personal accountability is tough for some people, right? For whatever reason. There's a whole world that happened before they started working at that company. There's slates that were drawn on them as children. Maybe in their circle growing up, making mistakes wasn't allowed. Maybe there's lots of things that can prevent somebody from taking personal accountability. So we have to start, I believe we have to start from that place of everybody's story is going to be a little bit different. But I think that when leaders show up as being accountable, as role models, this already elevates how people are showing up. So I would look to leadership. Is leadership taking accountability? Are they showing people how to get that done?
Mhm.
And second of all, when somebody isn't taking accountability, are you prepared to have the tough conversation with them? You know what? Let's talk about it, right? I know you said that you're doing everything you can to hit the metrics, but let me just share a little bit about what I've seen. What I've seen is that you've been coming in late and that you've been leaving early and that I'm seeing you on your cell phone. I don't know why, but I'm not seeing you actually working as much as I typically see. Or your deliverables, maybe it's a remote role, your deliverables have been turned in behind schedule repeatedly without any communication that it's going to be late. So these are indicators that are showing me that something is going on here. You can give your employees specific information to help them see I'm not being as accountable as I could be for my actions or lack of actions. Um,
And
but
just
yeah,
jump in there. What Nothing you said was judgmental. You put no judgment on any of the things that you just said. You said, "This is what I'm seeing. This
yeah,
is the behavior, and this is help me understand."
yeah. So there's a consultant that works with the engineering firm that I'm with, and he has this wonderful saying. He says, when you're giving feedback, Treat it as if something that you could see on a videotape. Can you really see lazy on a
Mhm,
videotape?
mhm, mhm.
But you
Back
can describe, right? And so he says, treat feedback as if it's something you would see on a videotape.
yeah.
That's how you want to describe it. And I think that's such a helpful. I appreciate you pointing that out because that is part of it. As soon as we go into judgmental, as soon as we go into really not descriptive words that aren't helpful, we've just started to backslide, right? Now we've probably turned a corner where it's going to be a less productive conversation. And that's one of the things before we have this accountability conversation. What is our outcome?
Mhm.
What do we want to happen at the end of this conversation? Let's make sure our actions line up with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And as opposed to coming at it with a trying to catch that person out. I know I've been in something where that you can just feel they're waiting for the gotcha, and it's horrible.
And there's employees that I've worked with, there's environments that I've worked with leaders that have the gotcha style. And when it's a known behavior, the amount of stress and anxiety that happens to these employees,
Mhm.
they don't know around which corner. It's literally like walking through a haunted house and you don't know when somebody's going to jump out and scare you. Anybody who's ever been in that situation, I say that because Halloween's coming up, but I just think think about the impact. And if you want your employees to do their best work, putting them in this gotcha situation is not going to help you, leader. It's not going to help you. They're not going to do their best work because they don't feel safe.
Yeah, it's incredibly detrimental. So I also hear through the grapevine there's another book that you have been asked to contribute to, Brave Woman at Work, and you're in the 4th edition, which is Letting Go.
Yes, yeah. So there is, oh, it's so exciting. I was just brought in recently. So this is an anthology series. It's called Brave Women at Work, just like you said. And right now there's 3 books out there already. And I'm not an author on any of the 3, but there's incredible authors that are part of those. So it is lessons in confidence, lessons in resiliency, and lessons in leadership. Okay. So those 3 books are out. All 3 had hit Amazon's bestseller, and one is up for a New York Times bestseller. The 4th one that we have the kickoff coming up in just a few days is lessons in letting go. And so I was asked to have a chapter in that book. And I'm so honored, so excited. But when you think about this topic of conflict, of showing up as our best self, of navigating work environments, what are you going to let go so that you can create the environment that you want? What are
Mm.
you going to let go of?
Yeah, and sometimes you just need to let go of the job. And if that's not the answer, I think there's that, like you said, the first step. What can you take accountability for? What can you do?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
What was in the chapter? What did you talk about?
Yes, we're doing the kickoff to start the book
Oh.
in a few days. But yeah, I don't. So let me share it from this perspective, okay? Just in case I decide to change it a little bit. When I think about how I got here today, because if you read my book, the one that you mentioned in the beginning, How You Show Up Matters, you'll see that there's a lot of conflict that I've worked through, a lot of struggle, right? This compassion framework, this happened out of desperation because I was angry, bitter, jealous, insecure, ugly from the inside out, really, like bad. Yeah. And I was like, this can't work. Like, you're beyond broken. What's going on here? And so I created this framework. And I've spent the last 2.5 years I also work with a therapist and a life coach, but completely transformed how I look at things. And so when I think of letting go, it's a snake shedding their skin, right? That snake can't grow into whatever is next, right? A caterpillar can't grow into a butterfly unless it transforms, right? That whole shell on the outside needs to come off. And so as we walk through life, it can be painful. We bump up, we bruise, we score. There's layers that life has put on all of us. And it's letting go, shedding those layers. There's judgments that people had, perspectives that people have of you, judgments that you have on yourself that hold you into these limiting, can hold you into these limiting beliefs, limiting behaviors. And if you really want to live the life that you want, go.
Letting go and of the story sometimes. You like it's a story that you're telling yourself. So I know going back to the workplace, and I got a job, a corporate job, and it was dream corporate job for me. Coming from New Zealand, I was a physical therapist. I'd gone back to school, and now I got this legitimate job in a big corporate structure with the cappuccino machine and the view and the 401k. And I felt like I had arrived. I felt like I am legitimate. I did it. And about 9 months into the job, I realized, wow, I don't think this is going to work. Like I started to realize I had a toxic gotcha boss. And, and it took me months, like it probably took 6 months for me to actually wrap my head around that I was going to have to let this story go, that this wasn't the dream job, that this wasn't me making it, that, and I did, I let it go. And it was the best. It was fantastic. Like such an amazing opportunity experience. And then what it's allowed me to do by letting that story go. But it really was, and I look at your compassion and look at your compassion framework and I did go through those steps. And then just the like that awareness and acceptance was a few weeks in bed. And
Yeah.
like maybe I'd say 3 months of just feeling really depressed and grieving and letting myself go through that and then blaming myself. Like then I had to silence the judger, like that I was a failure. And then getting myself stimulated, like getting myself excited about and invested in what the next steps were. Onward, upward, new heights, horizons. Yeah, I did it. So I've gone through your compassion framework in the last year. Yeah.
I love that so much. And the thing is that I talk to people all the time who say it similarly to what you said. People are working the framework; they just don't know they're working
Right.
it.
Right.
But what if proactively we use this as a tool,
Yeah.
right? What it like you were working it, but you didn't even know it. But the next time you find yourself in something like that, where you're like, you know what, I'm not quite sure how to navigate through this. Let's apply the framework, right? It's a tool. It's a toolbox with a lot of tools in it. Use the hammer when you need the hammer. Use the screwdriver when you need the screwdriver.
This is why you've got a chapter in this book, because this is the pathway to letting go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first thing is realizing that there's the story's got to change. You got to let go of the story to allow a new story to be written. I have the same thing about marriage. Nobody gets married thinking they're not going to live happily ever after. And there's definitely a grief process where you start to come to terms with the fact that, oh, I'm not going to live happily ever after. It shouldn't be such a shock given that more than 50% of people get divorced. Still, we're all bought into the happily ever after love story. So it's a similar, I think, grieving process that happens in a marriage.
And that's such an interesting perspective because I think there's a honeymoon phase of a lot of things in life, right? And it's that awareness and acceptance of, but maybe it's not what I originally imagined.
Hmm.
Is there goodness here? Right? Is there goodness? Is there something you're fighting for? Whether it's a job or whether it's a marriage or whether it's a friendship, to be able to sit back without judgment and just really feel, how does this make me feel when I think about spending time with this person, spending time in that place? That's saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, to not be reactionary, but to be intentional and really think through the impact. Because the reverse is we move too quickly. We don't think about it. We haven't set ourselves up. And we thought it was bad before. Now we're really in trouble. So making that plan, what is it that I want out of life? If this isn't it, then what am I going to do about it? And what does that look like? Getting really clear, getting really clear.
And however, I think that there is that first piece of actually letting go of the story, the fantasy, and allowing it to evolve and be rewritten. So I'm talking from my own experience of my marriage being over 2 years ago, saying I want a divorce, but knowing that I wasn't going to have a messy divorce. I didn't want to not see my kids every day. I didn't want to, I wanted to keep my family intact. I didn't know how that was going to look, but I knew that. And so my husband and I were able to just re envision, you know, by holding on to what we value. So we separated, but we live together. And so we parent our children together. And but it definitely was a process of, I was so conditioned to see how it's supposed to look, and then to embrace that it doesn't look like that and it's okay. And I think we have that with work as well. This is what this job was supposed to look like. And it's not looking like that.
Yeah.
Like, and
And that's okay. Yeah. Yeah. And maybe you have a decision to make. Maybe you have a decision to make. I think, but the thing is that if you're in a toxic environment, regardless of where it's at, what do you want? Is that what you want? Is that really, is this how you want to feel every day?
nobody
You know,
wants that.
no, nobody. So what are you going to do about it? The thing that's tough is that repeatedly over and over again and not looking at it like repeatedly struggling and not making a decision. I think I want to be really clear that when I say take the time to figure it out, be responsible with that time is my perspective of 6 months, 3 years. Oh my gosh, just think about that. Just think about how that's going to weigh on you the longer you go. And the only reason why I add this is because I know a number of people that have a difficult time making decisions, really struggle in making decisions. And I've watched them deteriorate over time. And then when they're finally ready, they don't have the strength to make it through. They're so down.
Yeah.
I just want to be really clear on what I'm trying to say here, if I'm being clear.
I 100%, I think that's in both marriages and in a workplace.
Yeah.
Any place that is breaking you down is just, it's just going to get harder and harder. And yeah, asking yourself the question, obviously this isn't working. Why am I unable to change it? What's stopping me? Anyway, we've got nice and deep. It was lovely to chat with you, Amy. Thank you so much for your time. Good luck with the books. And yeah, I look forward to connecting with you again in the future.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here. I loved our conversation and I look forward to seeing you in the future.